As we go through the evaluation of your Intune app protection policies, the data protection framework was designed to ensure that you evaluate your app protection policies, but not just evaluate your app protection policies, to think about your audience on your app protection policies. Once you think about your audience on your app protection policies, to think specifically about the different settings that you're going to use for your audience, because not a single policy applies to everybody in your environment. So this is a very interesting step, right? I mentioned before, if you don't have an app protection policy today, you should create an app protection policy, at least for your Microsoft core applications. But once you go and create this first app protection policy, I want you to review the data protection framework, because the data protection framework is going to take you in a journey. And this journey is to review what is my target audience and how I'm going to set up and configure my different levels of policy. So let's talk about the level 1 on the data protection framework. The level 1 is using the most basic settings that your applications will need to operate. When you think about your end user experience, the end user experience is not going to be so disrupted when we go to the level 1. But as we go to the level 1, I think it's super important to evaluate what are some of those basic settings that we're going to use as part of my data protection framework. So when I create that app protection policy and I said, I'm going to create this app protection policy to all my users, is that the right audience for this app protection policy? So what we got to think about it is setting off these different levels based on personas or potential items in your environment. So let's think about your help desk. Your help desk is an important or interesting persona to use. When we go into level 1, I'm going to use the most basic settings. Those settings ensure that the data stay protected within the different enterprise recommendations as we state on the data protection framework. But again, I don't want to disrupt anybody else on my organization. So maybe the level 1 policy is a policy that I apply to the help desk, and maybe I apply to most of my users in my environment. But now let's think about how can we enhance the overall protection and the overall security of my environment. And that's when we sit down on the level 2 inside our data protection framework. On level 2, we're going to build up on the level 1 policies. And let me explain what that means. A level 1 policy already have a set of definitions, a set of settings that we're going to use. But a level 2 is all about enhancing what we already been built up. So while level 1 was deployed to the help desk, the level 2, I'm going to deploy it to my BYOD users. Those users that are constantly leaving my company, that are potentially using their own phones to access the data. I want to not use the level 1, but I want to enhance the overall protection of those applications. By reviewing the level 2, you're going to ensure that that data stay within the boundaries of the approved applications. I mentioned Outlook and Teams, but it could be your LOB apps, right? You build an LOB app for them, and I want to make sure that they can copy and paste data between them. But again, so you're enhancing the overall experience, whether they are using their own device or they're using a corporate device for that. There may be some impact on the end user experience as they get exposed to these settings. Let me explain what may happen, right? As they copy and paste data through those different applications, maybe the limit on the data that they're able to copy and paste is limited to a specific amount of characters. Maybe in the past, they could copy an entire document, but now, because they are on a level 2, they can only copy a specific amount of characters. And this is another great way for you to enhance the overall security of your mobile devices by creating this level 2 app protection policy by using the data protection framework. Now let's deep dive into a level 3 type policy. And let me tell you, level 1 was for your help desk, level 2 for your BYOD users. Who are my audience? What is my target audience of my level 3? And in this example, I'm going to think about my executive. I'm going to think about those users that I need to restrict their data to ensure the documents they access are secure. As they save their documents are secure in one location. So the save as is going to OneDrive, for example, instead of their local phone. Their copy and paste is limited to the things that they need access to, and that data cannot be exposed to others. Maybe this time on the conditional launch, I'm no longer just blocking the access, but if I detect something not being in compliance on that application, I'm just going to wipe the entire data to ensure the security of that application, but the security of that data that those users are actually accessing to. So again, you want to think about what are the risk levels that each of these users may present. Again, think about your audience. And this moment, I know is super interesting to think through it, because you may say, well, I will like one policy that will apply to everybody. But this is not the case on the data protection framework. We really want to sit down through about the data that this user is going to have access to, about the applications that these users are going to have access to, and the potential impact if there is a data exposure from those users. So it's all about risk management. We want to mitigate the risk or the potential for something that is of a risk in those devices. So again, we mentioned the different 3 levels in the data protection framework. Each of these levels are going to be built up on top of one another, and you should think about creating different policies for your different target audience. But at minimum, please review your app protection policy, create one app protection policy at least for the level 1, set it to the Microsoft Core applications, test the experience of your end users, and then continue your journey to the different target audience until you have applied successfully the entire data protection framework. Review the documentation, let us know if you have any questions, and good luck in the journey of the Internet protection and the data protection framework.